what was the difference between like an amateur and a professional creative?
You just like want to beat people up all the time. Okay, it's not just me. There's other people feeling this way. You need to be really adaptable and
You do need routine and you do need structure.
extreme burnout. I'm afraid of hearing bad feedback.
How do you use tarot cards to guide your creative process?
You almost need to get in the right headspace and be a vessel for the divine to just kind of go through you, you know?
I don't know what that is.
And all the fish were dead. This is weird, right? Like, it's Salem. Stranger things have happened in Salem.
I agree with that so much, the dead fish part especially. This is a bit of an awkward position to be doing this from, but nevertheless, a couple of things. I'm really sorry, but there's quite a lot of table noise during this podcast. There's a lot of like chonking and stuff on the table, but we're just gonna have to deal with it. I have managed to fix it for the next one, but I just didn't realize it was happening. So there's that. I'm sorry, you're gonna have to deal with it. Second, just a bit of promo for my newsletter, The Creator's Journal. If you're a creative, any type, musician, photographer, videographer, YouTuber, whatever you might be, and you want to feel a bit less lonely in your journey. That's basically what this is. It's just me putting my thoughts onto paper, not really paper, a keyboard, and then editing it and making it, somewhat relatable to all you peoples out there. And also just a bit of fun and giggles. I include some videos I've really enjoyed during the week and things like that. So yeah, The Creator's Journal, link in whatever, my Instagram, YouTube bio. Hope you enjoyed this one. Let's get into it. Welcome to a very impromptu podcast. This was organized a whole total of 45 minutes ago, probably. So
Something like that.
that's how we like it. Although we do like it a bit more organized. But anyway, before we start, you've been on here before,
Yes.
but we're in season 2 now, taking a new direction with how I'm going to ask some questions. But first of all, can you just tell me, who is Isanna?
Right. So that's me.
Yeah.
I'm Isanna, or Anna. Isanna is my artist name. I am a producer and music artist, first and foremost, and a psychology student, second, or at the same time, really, simultaneously. Yeah, that's who I am. I'm German American. I grew up in the States, but my family's German, so that's a big part of my identity as well. And I'd say those are like the 3 main parts of who I am, really.
Nice. Yeah. That's what I would say as well. Your psychology degree, is that finished now? Or is
It is.
fully done?
I just got my results today.
Today?
Yes, literally a couple hours ago.
Really?
Really good.
What did you get?
Good stuff. First.
First. Well
Yeah.
done. Well done.
Thank you.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
What was your dissertation in?
So it wasn't so much a dissertation as it was an independent project. So for that, I looked at essentially creativity. Again, really big part of my life. And basically how creativity can change depending on context. So doing creativity as someone who's just a hobbyist versus someone doing that same medium professionally is like, there can be a world of difference in how they perceive creativity and how they are creative and just how they act in general and feel as well. So I interviewed 3 different creatives and ended up using the data from 2 of them. And then, just wrote about kind of they were professional creatives. So I wrote about how they feel about creativity and how they felt doing creativity as a hobby versus now how they feel as a professional in their fields. And it was really interesting. It was a great project.
Yeah. What were your sort of main findings? What was the difference between like an amateur and a professional creative?
So, I mean, it sounds simple when you say it, like the main finding, but the main finding really was that basically the kind of research question was, how does creativity change depending on context? And I found that it changes dramatically. And that sounds kind of like basic, but, from what I found, it can be quite an intense adjustment, especially for some people when they go from, for example, one photographer that I interviewed felt that photography used to be for him kind of more of, an outlet. He did it to connect with people, to have fun, that kind of thing. And then as he transitioned into professionalism, it became more intense. When he started working with clients, obviously he started thinking more about income. It wasn't so much just, a way to express himself. And he even almost felt that manifested in a lot of ways as sometimes like even physical stress, like strain on the body, things like that. So he said that it was a massive adjustment for him, and it's definitely something to consider, especially for people who have a passion and really want to turn that into a profession. It's always like important to kind of take into account how your relationship might change to creativity, how inevitably things might change over time. So yeah.
What do you think is do you think as a general rule of thumb it's a good thing or a bad, or not necessarily, that's maybe a bad way to structure it, but is it, at what point should someone start pursuing their passion as a career, in your opinion? Do you reckon that there's like certain maybe certain industries that are more that allow for more of a professional sort of lifestyle, or is it more of a personality type that you think is more suitable for the professional world?
I mean, I think it's a little mix of both. I think you mentioning personality types is actually really interesting, because I do feel that there is a certain person that can do really well in freelance careers, especially like creative freelance careers. And I guess creativity it's like one of those things where what's the actual definition of it? Because I feel like a lot of things can be creative. But like, let's say, for example, freelance photography or videography, I think someone who can do really well in that field is someone who is really good with being very spontaneous, like who is okay with uncertainty a lot of times. Like they're okay not having, maybe not always being aware of where the next paycheck check is coming from. Someone who's really good with kind of thinking on their feet, and is okay, with being adaptable, because I think creativity and freelance creativity especially, you need to be really adaptable. And for someone who really likes routine and things cut out for them, having someone almost like impose a routine on them, it might be a tough transition. And in cases like that, I would almost say, and this is something I spoke about with the other woman that I interviewed who's also a photographer, is she kind of talked about how for a while she was working in a coffee shop, and that was kind of like her main source of income while she was adjusting to doing freelance photography. And looking back on it, she said that those were some of her best years. She said, honestly, like, even if it sounds surprising, like she wasn't working as her main job in her passion, but she really liked having the structure of like working in a coffee shop, having set hours, knowing exactly where her pay was coming from, so that then she had the freedom to just do whatever creative projects she wanted on the side, and she could pick and choose, and she didn't have to take whatever, came to her, basically. So she really liked that. And she now works full time, but as a photographer, yeah. But she still says, like, if she had to, she would do that, because she doesn't necessarily like to, like in commercial photography, a lot of times, like, you can't really pick and choose what projects you're on, and they can be, again, quite intense. And so she feels almost like there is something to be said about doing a job that is very structured, and then you can have that space to do whatever you want, essentially, on the side.
Yeah, for sure. I think stability is quite important, and it's not. It's really hard to tell about personality types and of who would thrive in like a freelance or creative position, because I do also believe, like, personal belief, like, I do think like you do need routine, and you do need structure. As a freelance, especially because there's no one there to make that for you. So it's especially important to have that, because without it, it's just unrealistic to to think that you're going to be motivated every day.
Yep.
So I think like having a structure and just like something just to follow when you wake up on a bad day, it just makes that lifestyle a lot more manageable, because then you're not fighting with little decisions, or when should I start work, or what do I need to do, or just like removing as many little decisions as possible. So then you can just like focus on the task at hand whenever you have those bad days. Because, you know, when you're having a good day, it's like, it's easy to work. It's easy. Oh, I can do this, I can do that. But, you know, that's like 1 out of 5 days.
Yeah.
The other 4 is like, you kind of just have to like have a bit more of a structured, like routine, because otherwise you'll just fall apart, which, you know, I've personally found like many times. If my day is just not structured, there's like the chances of the day failing is exponentially higher.
Yeah.
So it's I don't know. It is definitely is a journey of that transition, because, you know, when you do sort of start freelancing at the beginning, it's kind of like quite romantic. Oh, I can do it whenever I want, and like, you know, it's good pay when the pay does come, but then, you know, it's kind of like bohemian lifestyle. It's like kind of whatever, you know, having a bit of fun. But actually, the more you step into it, the more you like speak to the people that have actually made it. They're the ones that tend to have a bit more of a structured lifestyle. And of course, you know, there's exceptions to the rule always, you know, that you do have like the spontaneous artists and stuff, whatever, but really it's the one that sort of is the consistent work that sort of like stacks on top of each other in terms of like effort over like whatever couple of years. You know, if you're just doing something every day, just naturally it's going to work out a lot better than, you know, if you just have a spurt of energy every 5 days and you do something.
Yeah.
Like for example, like one of my best friends she's a really good photographer, and she's had quite a lot of success in photography. Probably the most most successful photographer I know. And she's made really good money out of it, but it's like, it's so unstable for her. And now she's kind of, you know, she actually really likes a structured lifestyle, that she's not self-imposed on herself. She actually does like working in an environment where there is some structure. So what she's doing is she's like trying to find a good job within the industry. So for example, like a studio assistant, and because she's had quite a lot of experience, she can actually find quite a decent job within the industry that is still not too far off, you know, too far off the path, where, you know, she has a pay, you know, she's got her like salary, but then she's also actually she's putting less pressure on her own photography work, and it's allowing her to sort of, it's allowing her to be more authentic in her photography, which is what she feels like she was missing once it starts becoming too professional and you just start to create just for the industry. Which again, I don't actually think there's anything wrong with that. If you know, there's people that, you know, take a real sort of business way into creating things, which is definitely a way to make it into the industry for sure. But there's some people that are a lot more sort of authentically motivated. You know, they want their work to be personable. They want their work to be like recognized. I'd say like almost like a creative ego, and it's not in a bad way. I don't actually think having an ego is a bad thing, but you know, but people, you know, they want their work to feel like it's theirs. They're creating it for themselves, and that then is creating money, rather than like the business side of things where you're sort of just like, you don't really care. Like you're just there to make it work, however that works, and people find a lot of enjoyment in that as well. So there's definitely a lot of different ways to do it, and different personality types definitely play into that sort of game, shall we say.
Well, that's the thing, is I think the reason why I was so interested in this project, I mean, is because I have the experience of working professionally in music, so I know what that feels like to make that transition from hobby to professional. And I think for me, one of the main things was I felt a lot of times when I had this extreme burnout, like when I was completely focused on music, I was only doing that, which is what I thought, you know, you had to do as a professional creative. And I think to a large extent, it's true. If this is your job, you have to day in, day out, be focused on that, and that's great. But it does come with, if you're not careful, a certain amount of burnout. And so for me, I think this project was also, to an extent, a way to kind of explore whether other artists ever also feel a sense of, because for me, it came with a big sense of almost like shame and guilt. The fact, that maybe I'm not the type of person who, like you were saying with your friend, she feels it's really important to be authentic in her work and stuff. And I think I'm a similar type of person where it's almost like, and I could be wrong, maybe I'm judging myself, harshly or wrongly or whatever, but I almost feel like I'm less of a business type. Like I have a hard time seeing my art from like, okay, let's just get from point A to point B. Like for me, it's so emotional. There's like elements to it where I don't know if I can necessarily collaborate with every person that I meet. Like it's really hard for me to feel vulnerable and open. And like in music, you have to do session work a lot where it's like just you and one person who you don't know, and you just meet for the first time, and it's like, okay, let's be super vulnerable and say everything, like dump our hearts out to each other and make a song. And especially when management is involved and stuff, there's a lot of external pressure to come out of that session with a great hit, a really good song. And for me, I think it was kind of just that sense of almost like trying to see if it was okay to feel the way that I was feeling about creativity and working in creativity, and without putting too much of myself into the project itself, because biases and stuff like that, they're inevitable, but I tried not to, I tried to see it from as objective a standpoint as I could. But I did find a lot of similarities in what my participants kind of were feeling about creativity and adjusting into professionalism and stuff. So I found a lot of things where, as I was reading, I was like, okay, it's not just me. There's other people feeling this way. And I think, again, it's that sense of there's no right or wrong in how you do it. Like, if you're the type of person who can be very objective with their art or their passion and just, sit down every day and say, okay, even if I'm not being super authentic today, at least I'm, making rent or whatever. If you can do that and you can make it your full-time thing, more power to you. But it's also completely okay to say, I need something stable, maybe a 9 to 5 or like whatever, something where I know my paycheck is coming each, month. And then have that freedom to do whatever you want on the side in terms of your creativity. And I think both is okay. And that's kind of why I'm interested in this area, essentially.
Yeah. And same, to be honest, because I do find this sort of lifestyle very interesting. And especially nowadays, I mean, like we're living in the age of like individualism. Yes. Where it's like, it's like you really don't need much to make something quite impressive. It's in basically any side of art industry. If you're a musician nowadays, like you have, like a million outlets, and you can basically, there's a possibility for you to make it by yourself. If one of your songs goes viral on TikTok or whatever, you don't need crazy equipment. Like you can use these mics, like £100 mics and like a laptop. Everyone can afford that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. This is £100.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Good to know.
And like for videos, like cameras are like incredibly affordable nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
Writers, like there's really popular blogs, Twitter as well. People, writers do really well on Twitter.
Now Threads
as well. Yeah, of course. So it's like nowadays you really, there's a lot of opportunity for individualism to thrive, and there's a lot more, the creator economy is absolutely thriving right now, especially during COVID. It blew up as well. Yep. With so many, like weird little independent people just starting to make a living off, their weird little side hobby of making, like, I don't know, clay pots in their like in their basement, and they just blew up on like TikTok, and now they can just like make a living out of it.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then, you know, like you said, there are so many ways to make it happen. For me, like what I found over the years, because I think it's probably like my eighth year as a freelancer.
Congratulations.
Yeah, but it's, you know, it's like it is a struggle. But I used to be more protective over my work, but I think I've changed dramatically of how I view my own work now. Like I'm a lot more, like you said, like objective. Like I'm kind of like, okay, cool, I'm gonna make it. I'm gonna try and just like make it work, and I'm not gonna be too like precious. Yeah, too precious about it. Like because it gets to a point where that sort of feeling of preciousness, it can be quite paralyzing, where you just feel like, oh, like I can't put this up because it's not good enough or whatever. But actually, at the end of the day, for me, like my belief is you kind of just like have to put it out there, because people, first of all, no one will even remember. That's like, no one will really care. It's like you're the only one that cares.
Yeah.
And second of all, it's the best form of like improvement, because then you get feedback not only from yourself looking at the whatever you make from your videos or writing now, but also like you do get some feedback from the people around that have seen it, you know, like especially if you're quite small, like most of the feedback you get is from your friends, and yeah, most people just kind of say nice things. So
yeah,
it is quite, actually I do find it really nice when I get some critical feedback back
from a rando.
Not from random, from friends.
Oh, from friends.
From friends. Yeah. Like I do. I also do allow the space for that to happen. You know? I believe like if you make stuff, you have to like kind of like push people, be like, just shit on it. Just like I'm gonna give you this video and just like tell me what's bad. Yeah, I don't care about the good parts. Like okay, I know some of it is good, but what's bad about this? You know, I think that's like really beneficial, because it's the fastest way to like just get feedback, and then you get that feedback, and then you just implement it in the new thing, rather than trying to just like perfect the one thing.
Definitely.
That's what I'm finding.
That's hard though. I'm really bad with like, definitely for me, I'm always scared to show my work, because I'm the type of person, like I'm afraid of hearing bad feedback, because then I feel like, okay, the whole thing is bad. Yeah. I'm just not gonna. But that's to my fault. So I think that's a really good idea, like for creative people to, you know, just allow themselves to get that feedback and practice not taking it so personal, because not everything is, you know, black or white. There's like gray areas. It could be a really good video or song or whatever. It just needs fine tuning here and there. And it's, but this is the thing, is like, I think especially when you're doing creativity professionally, it's kind of, usually, I mean, it's not always the case, but usually it is someone's passion. Like it's something that is really part of their identity. So it's almost like I feel with me, when I show someone my work, it's like I'm just bearing my soul to them in a way. And like if they say something mean about it, it's like, damn, I'm bad. Like I'm not good.
It's not the work, it's you.
It feels really personal. So, you know, but that's a really good strategy. And one other thing that I learned from this whole project as well is, especially for people who are doing their creativity full time, one thing I learned is that it's super important to then have a hobby, like especially a creative hobby, that has nothing to do with your main medium. So you have like two almost like facets of creativity. You have like your personal creativity, like your little hobby or whatever, or sorry, not little, could be a big hobby, whatever. Your little hobby, and also your, you know, professional creativity. And that kind of allows you to have, you know, your thing that you make money off of, but then it allows you to have a whole side where you can just explore yourself and your creativity from a completely unbridled standpoint, like something that is just, you can just go off the rails and you don't ever have to show anyone if you don't want to. Like, so that's another thing that I learned, which I thought was really interesting. Again, it's something that seems really simple, but actually I think a lot of people, you know, maybe when you're in it, like you need someone to kind of be like, you can do this, and this will make your life easier, you know? good to
Yeah, for sure.
check it all out.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, for me, it's like I also and I also like it, like you said, like, what is creativity anyway? I do think you can find creativity in many, because creativity is like, I guess it's just like not just problem solving. There's a lot more to it, but like
it's something. I actually know the definition of creativity. Do you want to hear it?
Yeah.
It's something novel and useful. So it's
novel and useful.
It has to be new. Like, it has to be no one what I try to say, no one has invented it before, the thing that you just made. So it has to be new, but it has to have a use for the thing that it's supposed to be doing. Like, it's supposed to work, that those are the two key things.
So it has to be novel.
That's this is the thing, though. That's
a weird definition, because like
weird.
What is novel? Do you know what I mean? Because everything's a remix of like what's already been.
That's a good point. Everything is a remix. I always say in music, like, every song is just a remix of another song.
No, yeah, and no, that's where it comes from. But I actually think this is like for everything. Everything's a remix.
That is the definition that I've found most in psychology.
I see. Novel.
Literature. Something new, something useful. And those two qualities have to be present. So, but that can mean as well, it's really interesting because a lot of people think of creativity just as music or art or videography, whatever. But it can really be, math can be creative.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
That's the definition.
Yeah.
Math, science, whatever.
Yeah. Well, 100%. Yeah. Yeah, like when you're talking about different outlets in different hobbies, like for me, it's definitely like working out and like gym, because I actually find that can be creative.
Can be, yeah.
Because then you just like, you make out like what works for you, then you try and kind of like, you try and make a new program that's, that's suitable for your body type and how you, not just body type, but your lifestyle and your feelings towards working out. So yeah, 100% agree with the fact that you do need something else apart from your work. It can be like working out, or like but you mentioned something creative to add on top of your creative work, which I do.
It doesn't. The thing is, I think the main point is that you have something that is not your work. You can obviously you can have. I think a lot of creatives have, side projects within their medium that they do that has nothing to do with income or whatever. Yeah. But I'm saying it's good to have something, whether it is creative or it's like golf, whatever, something where you feel like you can express yourself in a certain way. Like, maybe you're a really angry guy, okay? You just like want to beat people up all the time. Do MMA, okay?
Yeah.
Street fighting, like anything that is not like, tied into your income in any way you can express yourself is like super healthy to have, is I think the main thing. Yeah,
100%, because you do drive yourself crazy if you just spend too long thinking about work.
Yep.
Because then, that in itself becomes quite paralyzing. Like I just find that sometimes I'm like, I start overthinking about just like every step of the direction that I'm trying to go. I'm like, okay, but this needs to happen, but then it's not perfect if I do this, then if I'm speaking to this and I'm working on this project and I can't do this, and I'm like, I'm just gonna go for a walk, and I just like no music, just go for like a 15-minute walk.
No, music is hardcore. Just raw dog in the streets.
Yeah, like literally, raw dog in the streets. Yeah, so I go outside and I'm like, all right, I don't need to solve the fucking world's problems today. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just like, it can get very overwhelming very quickly if you just, especially if I'm just talking for me personally, like, because I live by myself, so
yeah,
I have a lot of time to spend by myself and just like overthink and freak out about every single part of the journey.
Yep.
So you're definitely having just like anything, just doing anything that's not connected to work can be incredibly useful. All right. Sick.
Nice.
I will ask you a specific question about how, because I don't really know anyone else that does this, but how do you use tarot cards to guide your creative process?
Well, I'm a freak. So.
Nice. That explains it. Next question.
So Right. I'll just give a little backstory, just as like context. So I basically started reading tarot cards. I want to say maybe 4 years ago now. It's been a journey, me and my cards. It was a time in my life where I was just very confused. It was my first year living in London, and I was it was chaotic, and I wanted some guidance, I guess. And I've kind of always been into esoteric things and the occult and things like that. But I'd never gotten into tarot. And I did a little research on it, and obviously there's the element of tarot that is, I think the most famous, where people use it as a means of fortune telling or seeing what's in your future and stuff. But then there's also a whole side of it that is more like geared towards self-awareness and like doing energetic check-ins with how you're feeling, what's going on in your subconscious, basically. And actually, the first deck I bought, which was funny because you're actually not supposed to buy your own first tarot deck. You're supposed to have it gifted to you. But I just like, I can't wait for someone to buy my tarot deck for me. So I just went and bought one. And I bought like a guidebook. And interestingly enough, this was really fascinating to me. The guy who wrote my guidebook is I don't know if he is alive or not. He may very well be. Anyway, he is a psychotherapist, which I just found wildly fascinating because I thought the only people who were into tarot were just, some hippies, some guy somewhere.
Some guy in the forest.
Right. And so it was this psychotherapist, and he wrote this book, and I just found it really interesting. And so for me, tarot became, yes, a way to every now and then check in, see if I could see into the future, what's happening. But more importantly, it kind of just became a way for me to figure out. So the one thing about me, this is a side note, but is I feel like I'm quite good with like helping people talk about their problems and things like that they have going on. Like I think I'm a good listener, like I try to be, and I really like that. But I find I have a hard time figuring out what's going on in here, like in me. Like I just don't know. So tarot became a way for me to just sit down and almost like meditation, just really check in with myself and figure out how I feel about a certain situation. Because the cards are, for the most part, just archetypes of the human story, right? They're like the hero's journey that people tend to go through. Or when you pick up any book, any like fantasy book or whatever, watch a movie, it's usually like the hero's journey. Like they start out and then they meet some weird wizard who's like, you need to go see the magic cave, and then he goes and defeats the dragon. He has to like overcome stuff. Basically, the tarot are just archetypes of that. So when you read the cards, it's kind of just like, they're like important elements of the human journey that you then look at, and you kind of just naturally impose whatever you're feeling onto them. So for me, it's like, whether it's true, quote unquote, or not, it's just a really good way to know yourself and know how you're feeling. And then if you're reading for someone else, obviously help them figure out how they're feeling. So coming back around to creativity, I mean, I would say there's a lot of different ways that I use it. Like I feel like I've incorporated a lot of tarot elements into my music. So from that standpoint, it's been really cool, just because, again, it's almost like you're coming up with little stories, and that can be really inspiring for writing and things like that. But I think even more importantly, it just helps me become clear on how I feel about things so that I can then translate that into art from a very like sober, I know what's like almost like a third person perspective, instead of, being so in it that I don't know what I'm feeling at all. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it's essentially just like just putting, I mean, you said it's like meditating. It's just putting time aside to think about a specific issue, problem, or direction, you know, and then having the cards sort of present some sort of beginning points of thought and ideas. Is that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think so. I think it's also just really interesting because I mean, when I first started out, I only read for myself. Again, I was like, I just wanted to know what was happening in me. I was very confused. I still am sometimes. But yeah, that was the main thing. And then slowly but surely, you know, especially through Alex, that's my brother, like he would kind of tell people, oh, you know, like my sister reads cards, and it kind of became this thing where then people would want me to, like, I've read your cards and stuff. And quite a few times I've had people say that, especially when it comes to like current energies, even if I don't know their situation, my readings have been fairly accurate. So this is the thing, is like, I feel like sometimes it's almost easier for me to read for someone else than read for myself. Like, I use it as a check-in, but it still is hard for me. Like, when I read the cards, I find it wildly difficult sometimes, even if I'm, you know, trying to be as unbiased as possible. Again, it's like, I think to an extent you impose a lot of your own, I mean, that's what it is kind of imposing your own viewpoints and your subconscious viewpoints onto the cards. So it can be really hard to read for yourself as well, which I learned over the years from reading other people's cards, that I almost feel like it's easier to read for someone else. Although I do enjoy reading for myself too. Again, it's very therapeutic. Sometimes it's like, if my brain is really, like, I just feel like I can't meditate, I'll use the cards instead to just try and focus in on something.
It just sounds like a good exercise for focus. And if you know, if I think about it from more of like a pragmatic sort of point of view, more of a practical point of view, it is just like, you know, as simple as just putting time aside and focusing on just whatever you're struggling with at the time being. You know, if whether that is feeling lost or friendships, relationships, how to deal with certain things. I just think it's really important how, you know, people use all types of things to do that. You know, it's like tarot cards is one of them. Obviously, just like, you know, I spoke about in my recent newsletter, like visualization, just like sitting down and like closing your eyes and just going through all the different options, or, you know, whatever, you know, for crystals, whatever people use, you know, there's like loads of stuff that just, you know, and I think it's all just connected by the same thing, which is just sitting down and just putting some time aside to like figure out this thing that you're trying to figure out. Yeah.
I think, again, coming back to that, the psychotherapist who wrote the book, at first I was, you know, I thought it was weird that he was a psychotherapist and he was really into cards and he wrote a whole book on it. But then I thought about it, and the more as well as I've gotten back into the world of psychology, I actually feel like tarot is it is actually, in a way, it's a method of therapy in a way. Like, I don't know if you know what a Rorschach test is.
No, I don't think so.
It's basically, it's a very, it's like an older method. It was used a lot in early psychology and like psychoanalysis, where the patient would be shown like ink blots, like a piece of paper with an ink blot on it. And then the psychotherapist would ask, what do you see? So the patient would just have to look at it and talk about whatever shape they saw. And there is no right or wrong answer. There is no, you know, preconceived, this is what it is. But it's just a way for the psychologist or therapist to understand subconsciously what comes to mind, which can obviously tell you a lot about that person's situation. And for me, this is what I feel like as well, if I'm reading someone's cards, for example, something I like to do now, something I like to implement is asking the person, what do you see in the card? Because I think even more important than me telling someone what I think they're feeling is, what are you feeling? Like when you see this card, because again, they're just pictures and you can see whatever you want in it. You can see a card that is, maybe quote unquote, not the best card to get or something, like let's say the devil card or something, even though I don't believe there's good or bad cards, but nevertheless, you could see that card and think, oh, this is a bad card, but someone might be looking at it and they might be drawn to certain elements of the card that I would have never seen or someone else would have never seen. And I think that can tell you a lot about someone's mental state. So I think it's just it's just a very, it's like a fun way of getting to the subconscious.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, because it has to be entertaining, kind of like, because like meditating, whatever, can be quite daunting, can be quite boring, and a lot of these things can be a bit daunting, but actually if you just like sprinkle a bit of just like entertainment, that can actually become like a bit of a fun game where you want to participate into it. So it does make a lot of sense.
It's fun, man. Yeah. Everybody loves
I
having
love
their cards
it. I love
read.
it. Yeah,
it's great.
Okay. What do you reckon your biggest sort of like moment of awe that you've had from your own work has been? Like not moment, like your biggest like, wow.
It's a good question. I think, sadly, no, it's not like, sadly, I feel like I haven't had a moment of awe in my creativity in a while, but I have had one that I think has been the most profound one. And I would say that was probably maybe 1.5 years ago, and I wrote a song. And for me, it was a song that I think, like, I know this sounds kind of crazy, but I don't know if I will ever write, and this isn't me being like, I wrote the best song ever. Like, that's not what this is about. But for me, the song was so special and like it meant so much to me. And yet, looking back, I'm not sure how I made it, like how it came together. Is one of those things that, and I'm sure you know a lot. I think we've spoken about flow state. I don't know if we've spoken about it. Maybe at some point. For me, it was a piece of work that I made almost completely in flow state. So it was almost like I wasn't completely conscious. And this is another thing that came up a lot in my project. When I was speaking to these two photographers, they mentioned a lot about kind of altered states of consciousness and how some of their best work comes about when they're almost unaware of like their own body. Time seems warped, like things are just strange, and then they come out of it with this piece of work. And for me, I made this song, I came out of it, and even like the guitar part, I wasn't even entirely sure like how, like I didn't know the notes or anything. Like I just played it in the moment because it sounded cool like when I was making it. And listening back to that song, and whenever I play it for people, I think the consensus when I've shown it to people is like, wow, this is definitely something, like you almost feel like it's like a meditation or something. Like it's a very special piece of work. But again, I couldn't explain to someone, like I could explain the elements, but I don't know how they came together. And this is something that I think is really cool with artists. And I firmly believe, and again, there's different belief systems on this, but I think that to create, you almost need to just get in the right headspace and be a vessel for the divine to just kind of go through you. You're just like the mouthpiece, basically. And sometimes I think that's a really relaxing way of seeing it, because it's like, okay, I'm not even responsible for this. I'm just responsible for, I'm basically like the translator. I'm just the instrument, the tool. And you kind of just, I think it's like that feeling of letting go which can be really hard again. It's like when you have like a deadline or something, it's really hard to just sit there and be like, oh, okay, I'm so zen right now. I'm just going to be the mouthpiece. Like, it's really hard to do that. But I genuinely feel like that's when I've made my best. I don't even know if someone else would hear them and be like, wow, that's so profound. Maybe not at all. But for me, it was profound, and it still is. And again, I say sadly because I feel like I haven't had that in a while. And I'm trying to get back to that.
Yeah. Yeah, those moments are hard to come by, but and I don't think you can force them that much. I think they do present themselves when you put the work in. I don't think they come about if you don't put the work in. Do you know
what's that saying? It's like when opportunity meets preparation.
That's good though. When opportunity
or
meets
luck or something like that.
Yeah, man, like luck is definitely a thing, but you can add to your chances of luck by doing the right things.
Yeah.
100%. Like, and actually, I'm also kind of quite a believer in that thought of just being a vessel for ideas.
Let's go.
Yeah.
He's in the same school of thought.
yeah, I do believe it as well. Like I do. I can't remember, someone on Joe Rogan probably, but like was just talking about how like believes that humans are just vessels for ideas. The actual thing that makes the world go around is ideas, and they're just fighting. The ideas themselves are fighting each other to just see which one will come to fruition, and then if it comes, and then and who it comes out from as well. So yeah, I do think we're kind of vessels for ideas and for anything else, but also you can't completely rely on that train of thought, because then you can live your life quite lazily at the same time. You do have to put yourself in a position where the idea will be, because also ideas they're picky. Do you know what I mean? They're not just going to pick a loser.
That's true.
Do you know what I mean? They're like, oh no, I like, the ideas valued themselves enough to be like, I don't want to pick that guy, but hey, he's been putting in the work, and I believe if I go through him, then he's got a better chance to like
manifest it.
Yeah, not just manifest it, but like give me like the time of day to make it happen. So
well, I think that's really interesting. Alex talks about this a lot as well. Is that I think we both share this idea, that ideas kind of come from above or from wherever, and you have to translate them. But we also do believe in almost engaging with your creative work almost like an athlete would train. So it's like you show up every day to work on your skill set and get really good. And again, so it's like you have the skill set to, when you get these ideas, like effectively put them on paper or into your medium or whatever. Which again is like, I think this is why it's like it's a very fine balance. You have to find the right so you're not like overworking yourself. And I think this is the thing is, for me, a lot of times I was out of balance with my creativity, where it's like I would show up every day with this athlete mindset and just keep drilling and getting really good technically. But then I wasn't allowing those ideas to come through because I was just so dead set on like, okay, I have to finish the product, I have to do it. But like I had no inspiration to draw from. So, and then again, on the flip side, it's like if you just sit around and like wait for the ideas to come to you, you might not have those skills to make them. So it's tricky.
It is tricky. Have you what have you found in life that's like inspired you that you didn't think that was gonna inspire you?
Oh my God, thank you for asking this question. So it's funny because I was in the States recently, visiting my hometown, and I hadn't been there in 5 years, and I was there with my mom, and then we did a 3-day trip. So I grew up in Connecticut, and we did a 3-day trip after we arrived to go to Boston. And because basically I just didn't get to see Boston a lot growing up with school, like everything going on. There was just no time. And I also really wanted to see Salem, which is like 30 minutes from Boston. And me being the person I am, I can't believe I've never seen Salem, Massachusetts, you know.
I don't know what that is. Like a... I don't,
So that's fine. That's fine. Salem is it's where the witch trials happened. It's like the really famous Salem witch trials. That was in Salem.
Okay.
Which is why I'm saying, like, me of all people, and also
I was just saying
Salem, Massachusetts. Nice. I got myself a t-shirt. Nice. But yeah, anyway, so I really wanted to see it because it, you know, obviously the people who were persecuted in the town were probably not witches. They were just normal people who, you know, as the witch trials were, yeah. And they were just like women who people didn't like, or men that people didn't like, and R.I.P. rest their souls. But anyway, when we got there, you basically have to pass a harbor to like get through the town, at least where we parked. And I was walking past the harbor and I look into the water, and on first glance I was like, whoa, the water is so clear here. You can see all the fish. Like, they're right. It's like you can see them. The surface is so clear. And then I did a double take and I was like, wait, the water is not clear. It's like murky. It's like looked oily, and all the fish were dead. And they were all just the same type of fish, and they were like floating in piles over here, or like there were a couple interspersed. And I looked at my mom and I was like, this is weird, right? Like, everywhere you looked, you just saw dead fish everywhere. And I was thinking, like, this is not a good sign. Like, this can't be a good sign. Maybe it's because Salem, maybe there's like a curse upon the town or something. I don't know. Which is me with my logical mind. That's my first instinct.
Logical. There's a curse. I like
literally,
how logical.
That's literally my first thought. And we were like walking through town, and it smelled like the whole town just smelled of death. Obviously, because the fish were rotting everywhere. It's a waterside town, and everything smelled like dead fish. Mm-hmm. And so we were spending our day there, but you could smell it. You started getting used to it. But then we were in this garden, and we were talking about this, and then these two people came through. It was a man and woman, I'm guessing they were married, walking their dog. They looked like locals, so we were just like, what, do you guys know what's going on here with the smell and all the dead fish? And they were like, yeah, this isn't normally how the town is. 5 days ago, there was a freak accident in the harbor where I guess a boat, the net just broke. And I don't know if the fish were dead they were already dead, but the net broke and all the dead fish were now in the harbor and they're just decomposing. And that's why the town just stank of dead fish. And we were chatting to this couple, and then they said something ominous where it was like, yeah, but, you know, it's Salem. Stranger things have happened in Salem. And I'm a bit, you know, socially awkward, and I wanted to ask them, like, what do you mean by that? But I didn't. Like, I bit my tongue, and I still regret it because I just thought that was such a weird thing to say. And so that was basically the event. This net just broke. But all that to say is, like, that event happening inspired for me so many, like, I've started little short stories, because for me, like, it's like things like that are so niche, but they're the perfect start to like a story, like a horror story. Like when you watch a movie, you have weird events like that start off the film, things like that. And it was so weird, but that's something that you can only experience if you like go out into the world and go to a weird place. Like, I would never have thought of that. You know, that's not something I would just be sitting at a desk and think, oh, a net breaks in a harbor and all the fish are dead and then the whole town stinks. Like, you just wouldn't think of that. And so what your question was about inspiration, right? What was the question?
Yeah, inspiration where you didn't expect it.
Right. And this is the thing is, like, on the one hand, I get a lot of inspiration from reading. Like, I'm the type of person who's a homebody. I like to stay at home. I like to read and not stick my neck out too much. But on the other hand, some of my best ideas have truly been from just allowing myself to be in a weird place at a weird time. Like, I didn't know that was going to happen, obviously, but again, it's like I feel like I'm the type of person, as soon as I step out my door, weird stuff will happen to me. And it's like, I don't necessarily like to be in weird situations all the time, but sometimes I feel like I have to do that in order to get my best ideas. Because it's like, again, right place, right time, or wrong place, wrong time, depending on whether you like dead fish.
How you define it, yeah.
Yeah. So this is the thing is, and again, it kind of goes back to like, I think you have to be careful as a creative to not be pouring from an empty cup and just allow yourself to do something that is not your creativity, or like not creating, not drilling yourself constantly, and just go out and experience stuff and let things happen to you that you just, it's not a waste of time. Again, it's like you might think that situation was a waste of time, but now I have all these ideas. I'll probably write weird songs about this event, or like it will just, it's like a chain reaction. Like this will inspire one idea and it will go down the line. But it's like, this is the thing is, I wouldn't have expected to be inspired by that trip in that way, but there it was.
There it was, yeah. Yeah, I agree, yeah. Yeah, what do you say? Not to be pouring from an empty cup. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
I haven't heard that before. That's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was one thing as well. I had a friend who said something really profound to me the other day about a similar topic, where it was like, he was in, I don't know, he wasn't in the Louvre. It was like some other art museum in Paris. And he was looking at a Bosch painting. And you know how they're like really detailed, and usually they're like really grotesque, but they have all these tiny details. And he was standing looking really up close, like he was really close to it to look at all the tiny things. But then he was getting kind of overwhelmed with everything, like with all the tiny little minor things. And then he stepped back. Like he kind of had the thought, let me just step back and look at the whole thing. And then it was this whole massive painting with a wider idea behind it. And when you zoom out, I don't know if you could say it's less overwhelming, but you just have more perspective. And this is, I think, what you have to do as an artist a lot of the time is like, again, if you're sitting in your house or in your room all day, which is what I'm guilty of a lot of the time, just like staring at my computer and like nudging hi-hats like from left to right all day, you can completely lose perspective. Sometimes you just have to go out and look at dead fish. Sometimes.
Yeah.
Not all the time.
Yeah. No, I agree with that so much, and in the dead fish part especially. But no, like it's very easy to like focus on just like tiny details that really, the difference they make is like,
negligible.
I mean, of course it's important to like, like master your craft and be good at the like the niches and like the little things. But if what you're working on, there isn't a big idea or a bigger vision to begin with, or the idea itself isn't good to begin with, then it just doesn't matter. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
If the overall thing is not either thought out properly, or it's just not a good starting point.
Yep.
It's then you're kind of just you're just
hammering away
at a brick wall with like a plastic spoon.
Yeah. Man, that's a good visual right there. I feel like I've definitely done that.
Yeah. I've done that many times. Yeah. Moment of silence.
Moment of silence. That's all right.
Yeah.
Just take a breather.
To be honest, that's kind of all I wanted to get from you today.
Sweet.
Yeah.
I hope you got.
Yeah. I'm trying to keep these podcasts a bit more short and sweet now.
Yeah.
Just to be like a bit more concise and hopefully a little bit more easy to digest and listen to from an audience perspective.
Definitely.
Of point.
Oh well, I hope it was concise.
It was concise. I'm sure we'll probably do another one.
Yeah.
Where we dive
Episode
deeper. 3 at some point.
Yeah.
We're getting there.
Yeah, sweet. This was really fun.
Yeah.
I feel like I got to share my weird stories.
Yeah, you did.
I was hoping I could sneak the fish one in there.
Yeah, you did.
I didn't know if I'd be able to.
Yeah, you did.
But
You did. You managed to. Sick.
Nice. Well, thanks for having me on.
Pleasure. Classic. Sick. All right.
Nice. How long was that?
Just under an hour, which is actually kind of perfect.
That was perfect.
Yeah, because our last one was like 2.5 hours.
Yeah, it was something crazy.
Yeah, 2.5 hours.
I genuinely, whenever I come onto this podcast, I always feel like